it seems these days like everybody wants to have a label, no? And it's like we are just overrun and oversaturated by labels. I feel like we have got to this point where everybody is so desperate not to be categorized and not to be put into a box that instead of that, they just create tons and tons of new mini boxes and smaller boxes to be placed in. So I just wanted to talk about that. And first and foremost, this is all my opinion, and which I'm absolutely entitled to express, and everybody else can have their opinion, and that's all cool. That's a free world. So my opinion on all this labeling that is going crazy at the moment. Now, I've come at it from different angles, and do I think that there's people realizing that this can kind of hamper society? Absolutely. But I do also believe we're all on an individual journey, and I'm going to try and look at how I feel labels are coming about and why they're coming about and why we're just so obsessed with them these days. So when I look at it in the terms of ascension, I think, well, everything we're doing, every soul here is on its highest path for ascension. Every soul wants to evolve, and it's being pushed to evolve. So why are we then having all these kind of labels and limitations that people are putting upon themselves right now, and so much focus on them? And I actually do think that it's because we're waking up, actually. I think as our soul awakens, we realize that we are not our ego. We're not our flesh suit. We're not our body. We are, in fact, a soul. And a soul actually doesn't have gender. It's not a man. It's not a woman. It's not a color. It's not a sexuality. It's not fat. It's not thin. None of these things are who you are. And that's the thing. You are not fat. You're just carrying fat. You are not skinny. You just happen to have a skinny body. You're not any sexuality, really. You're a soul. You might be temporarily feeling that you have some sexual preference because that's the life experience that you chose to experience for whatever reason in this incarnation. And that could change. If you suddenly feel an overwhelming pull to a different type of sexuality, you're suddenly going to change. And this is why people go through a lot of these labels, because we are, I think, in a process where we just desperately want to know ourselves, and we're really on a fast track right now in our evolution. So I think people really are just wanting to know who they truly are. This is what I really believe about it. And it's sort of, you don't know what you are until you know what you're not, right? So it's almost like people feel like they have to go through a lot of these labels. Now, I just want to say outright, I have no problem with what anyone wants to do. If men want to wear dresses, if women want to wear trousers, if men want to wear makeup and wigs, if people want to call each other whatever they want to call each other, I don't care. I couldn't care less. Like, you do you. And I do think that we do need to be more accepting as a society of everybody. But when it comes to this insane labeling, which I think a lot of people know what I'm talking about, which goes across many different things, sexuality, colour. I've always said that I don't believe we've actually truly gotten over racism or sexism until we just have a president, and we don't have to go around and make a massive big deal that they're a female president or they're a black president or they're a Chinese president or whatever. They're just a president, because these things, when you stop all this over focus on these labels, is because there's like an insecurity there still. When you actually really genuinely feel like everything is equal, there is no need to even think about these labels. But yeah, I do think that we are probably ascending and starting to come to the realization as a society that we are not this body. We're a soul, and like I said, in a sense, some people I can see think, oh well, this is quite an ascended viewpoint because they're saying that I'm not a masculine and I'm not a feminine. But in my opinion, it isn't, because it's a ton more labels that are even more defined than these two. And I honestly do think it's because people are starting to shift through that thing. I don't want to be told what I am. I don't want to be put in the box of what I think a man is, or I don't want to be put in the box of what I think a woman is. And I'm going to fight I'm going to fight my feelings of racism by putting other skin colors in a box and commenting all the time on my observation of the difference. And I think there's a lot of waking up in this process of, you know, really realizing that we are, you know, we don't have to be bound by these things. We're not these things. We're a soul. We're completely unlimited. So in that sense, you could kind of say, well, you know, people are coming to this awareness. They're realizing they don't have to be in these black and white boxes, and they actually realizing that there's more options. But in my opinion, by creating all these labels, you're just further labeling yourself. And when you label yourself, you actually limit yourself. You're no longer unlimited, you're limited. So if you say I'm fat, you have limited yourself as a fat person, but you're not fat. You're actually a soul that's just choosing an experience of being fat. The same with gay. A soul isn't gay. A soul isn't straight or gay. A soul is just a soul. It just chooses to be with people of its own gender or in people of other genders, just for the experience that is going to create in that incarnation. And so whilst I you know, don't agree with all this small labeling, I do think that maybe in the grander scheme of things, we actually are moving forwards as a society, and this is people's kind of path. You know, we all have our individual path to get to sort of the same place, and maybe it is in people's individual paths that they sort of, this is their process of understanding that they are not their body, they're not their ego, they're not a gender, they're not any of these things. We are just a soul having a human incarnation and choosing preferences for that incarnation because they are in highest alignment with what we're here to learn in this lifetime. And yeah, that was just something that kind of came to me today in a discussion. But I think it's sort of ironic that, you know, people think that they're creating freedom for themselves by forming all these new labels, when really they're just penning themselves in even more. You know, you've got now asexual. You're not asexual. Like, no soul is asexual. You're just having a period where you don't want to have sex with anyone, and that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've had many years of my life where I felt like that because I just didn't have a connection to anybody. I didn't feel like I needed to label that. I just was going through that period, and that might last for a lifetime. It might last indefinitely. It might last for, you know, 2 months. But once you've labeled yourself, then you've put yourself into a box. And I even felt that with veganism. I actually stopped saying I was vegan unless it was just a preference, because I realized I'd actually put myself into a box, a limited box. And I was kind of defining myself as something that my soul is not. I was creating kind of a divide, because the thing with these labels is they don't. So I'm all about unity. I'm all about accepting everybody, accepting people's choices in ways that allow us to become more unified. And in my opinion, labels only seek to separate. Every part of our human identity is for separation. It's so we can experience separation. If we were just soul, then we merge. Like, if we didn't have individual ego, we would just merge. And we choose to have ego, to have separate experiences. But because we're wanting to come back to the oneness and the whole and move towards that, by separating ourselves out so much, we're moving away from unity. We're moving into deeper separation. And that's okay. That's an experience that people, like I said, are probably choosing to still end up in the same place. You know, we all have our path and we all have our journey. But that is how I see it. I see all labels as forms of separation and not in alignment with oneness, unity, because they kind of form a block. Well, I'm this. I only hang around with these people. You know, I'm forming a community of my own type. This isn't oneness. This isn't unity. Even like pointing out kind of other people's labels and differences, it's separating us from each other. And that's why the world is so separate now. If all these labels were bringing harmony, we'd be more harmonious. But I feel like we have never been less harmonious in many ways. Like, there's just, on smaller levels, there's just so much arguing. You only have to log on to social media and it's a battleground, because everybody is so defensive about their labels And labels, yeah, like I said, they're not who you are. You are not these things. They are not the core of who you are. They are just a preference that you're choosing to experience for however long you want to experience it for. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. You play around with that and jump in. You know, that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to jump in and experiment and play around while we're on this physical earth plane. But I don't believe that they are something that is, you know, that is arrived. So I'm just going to let these people go and experiment and play around with what they want, and, you know, we can meet down the line. That's how I see it. But yeah, I'd be interested to know how everyone else feels about it. And yeah, I'll speak soon.